My name is Kelly Parker, and this is my informative speech. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. Socrates. Becoming a communication studies professor is a great way to utilize a communication studies degree. Teaching in the communication field on the collegiate level is a job held in high regard. But why would anybody want to be a communication studies professor? For one, the freedom of research, the actual teaching of communications, and finally the mentoring aspect of helping students realize their place in the communicational scholarship and even having one's own mentors. As a professor, you're encouraged to work on research that advances one's field of study. It also gives one an outlet other than teaching to explore individual interests. One aspect of this is being marketable to collegiate institutions through research. To many institutions, conducting and publishing research is very important and could make a difference in landing a job. Another is the more research done, the more one can be in touch with what's going on in their community, thus making one's research relevant. Being a communication professor compels you to be up to date on the happenings in the communication field. Being in the know as a professor not only strengthens one's research ability, but also allows one to be able to apply new ideas of communication into research. As a communication professor, one not only researches to better themselves and their communication field, but also to inform their students on the values of communication. Teaching allows one to find their identity as a communication scholar. As a professor, one's teaching philosophy has a big impact on how well their students understand communication scholarship. Applying one's own knowledge to teaching students is what teaching is. Making an impact and seeing students understand is why some people become professors. But it's not always smooth sailing when it comes to students. Professors have their challenges also. For example, student conflict. As a professor, one always has to deal with students who are less than satisfied. Dr. Jenny Simon, a communication professor at UNCG, gave me this advice when dealing with conflict. Do not avoid. Face the conflict and take care of it. Acknowledge the complaint. Try to understand where the other person is coming from. Explain one's reasoning. And if needed, reflect on the situation before making any decisions. Another challenge for professors is students who lack the desire to understand, not just to understand to make money. Dr. Simon listed this as one of her personal challenges as a professor by saying, "The idea that professors are supposed to be job trainers and students are not learning for learning's sake is a challenge." Another aspect of being a communication professor is mentoring. One has a responsibility as a professor to point students in the right direction and receive mentoring of their own. As a professor, one has office hours that's unique to each professor. Having set office hours allows for one to be available for one-on-one student support. This is where a professor is there for their students, whether it be for clarification on an assignment or the need for advice about class. Which brings me to advising. Again, as a professor, one could be asked to be an advisor to students on their communication studies path, being there for them to figure out what classes they should take or even avoid. As an advisor, one also encourages students to think about where their degree is going to take them. But being someone else's mentor isn't where the mentoring ends. Having mentors of one's own is also a plus. Being surrounded by professors of the same scholarship, one has the benefit of being able to learn from those who've come before. Mentoring professors can give one insight that could have been overlooked. Having mentors, even after all one's education and research, is a valuable aspect of teaching. In conclusion, there are a vast number of things one can do with a communication degree. For many, that's what draws them to the communications major. But without those who teach and research the communication field, we would have no working knowledge of why we say and do the things we do. But to be a communication professor does not just involve teaching. It involves the research aspect of keeping the communication field evolving, and the mentor facet to keep students on the right track by offering scholarly advice and to be mentored by others who've come before. As with any career position, there are pros and cons to be weighed. But for me, coming from a previous desire to teach, I feel teaching others the components of communication is a desired position that should be considered by communications majors. Thank you.